With the fall of the Batista government to Castro's shaggy band of revolutionaries on January 1st, 1959, the first completely communist government in the Western Hemisphere was established. To escape the brutal communization of their country, thousands of Cubans have fled to the United States by every possible means. In a 5-hour speech broadcast by Havana Radio on December 2nd, 1961, Fidel Castro removed all doubt when he announced that he had been a communist since his student days at the University of Havana. Nikita Khrushchev welcomed him to the communist ranks and declared, "We must stir up fires where we can. Cuba we have helped and shall help further without fear. The United States did not interfere in Cuba." Thus, Lenin's heirs to the dictatorship of world communism had begun the third and final phase of the master plan, the encirclement of the United States. In the United States, only 90 miles from Cuba, activities of communist agents who called themselves Americans have made headlines. Alger Hiss, who had the confidence of an American president and access to vital secrets. Harry Dexter White, a key man in the U.S. Treasury. Judith Copeland, working amazingly enough in the Justice Department itself. Vernon Mitchell and William Martin, employees of the National Security Administration, who suddenly disappeared with valuable secret information. They turned up in Mexico, then Cuba, then Moscow. Captain Joseph E. Kaufman of the United States Air Force in Europe, convicted of espionage for the Soviets in 1962. This is only a partial list of Americans who have betrayed their country to communism. Here in San Francisco, USA, American university students riot against the House Committee on Un-American Activities. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover issued this special report over his signature. In his report, Mr. Hoover shows how known communist agents infiltrated campuses in the San Francisco area, promoting and inciting more than 1,000 students to riot against the House Committee, which for over 20 years has investigated and exposed communist activities in America. Mr. Hoover also revealed that Gus Hall, national leader of the Communist Party USA, sent congratulations to the West Coast comrades for the initiative and leadership they displayed at all stages of the demonstration. In conclusion, Mr. Hoover issued a sober warning to the people of America. In looking at the riots and chaos communists have created in other countries, many Americans point to the strength of our nation and say, it can't happen here. The communist success in San Francisco in May 1960 proves that it can happen here. The FBI has investigated the enemy at work in all areas of our national life. Congressional committees have documented the fact that communists have penetrated a number of labor unions, communications networks, areas of education, some church organizations, our federal government, our legislative halls, our armed services. These agents are dedicated, highly trained, and secretly working for the overthrow of our nation and the triumph of world communism. By 1950, the first phase of the master plan had brought 116 million people in Eastern Europe under communist domination. In Asia, the second phase has already added 700 million, and activity in Southeast Asia has been intensified by the communists. And now, with the acknowledged communization of Cuba and increasing red penetration in Latin America, a giant step has been taken toward the complete encirclement of America. The communists will allow nothing and no one to stand in their way. Recently, 67-year-old Nikita Khrushchev ranted, "I want to see the red flag flying over the entire world in my lifetime." Khrushchev alternately blows hot then cold about Berlin, creating a crisis when it suits his needs, using the pressure as a wedge to divide the NATO powers, or simply to divert attention from a furtive grab for power in another part of the world. In order to provide the tanks and troops, the money for espionage, propaganda, and subversion, Khrushchev keeps the inhabitants of Russia and its satellites at a bare subsistence level. Terror and intimidation prevent the people from expressing their resentment against a regime which promises so much but gives so little. 67% of the women and the children over 14 are in the labor force. The average Russian's personal income is less than $10 a week in terms of purchasing power. Khrushchev rules a nation where only 4% of the population have any voice in the government, and most of those have only the right to applaud. In his callous climb to power, Khrushchev has been responsible for the suffering and death of millions. The crimes of Khrushchev have been verified by congressional committee witnesses who testified under oath and documented their charges with data and photographs smuggled out of Russia. Among the crimes they charged were 30 years ago, as secretary of the Ukrainian Communist Party, Khrushchev directed the deliberate starvation of Ukrainian peasants who rebelled against forced collectivization of their land. An estimated 6 to 7 million innocent men, women, and children died as a result of this man-made famine. In 1945, Khrushchev supervised the mass arrests of priests and bishops in the Ukraine. At that time, there were 4,400 Catholic churches, 127 monasteries. Today, there are none. In 1956, the Soviet dictator sent Russian tanks and troops to slaughter the Hungarian students and workers who wanted freedom from communist tyranny. Students suspected of sympathy or participation in the revolt were sent to labor camps in Russia. In spite of this massive documentation and warnings from informed sources, there are many Americans today who will not believe the terrible truth about this man who holds supreme power over the Soviet Empire. World communist leaders gathering in Moscow in 1961 for the 22nd Communist Party Congress were told by Khrushchev that the United States has entered a phase of mounting difficulties and crises, the phase of its decline. The victory of socialism on a world scale is no longer far off. Will this fantastic prediction come true? We are a nation of 186 million people, many of whom are totally uninformed or apathetic toward the true nature of this grave problem. We have become a nation in which the responsibilities of citizenship are being ignored. We are encircled by international communism, and the enemy is in our midst. They advocate so-called peace fronts and preach coexistence while working to destroy faith in America's constitutional government and the benefits of private enterprise. We can halt and ultimately destroy the communist master plan for conquest if our people and our leaders have the courage and the will to win this Cold War. We must support our government by being well informed and by taking an active part in government. We must enforce the legal safeguards which enable our government to deal effectively with communist fifth column activities which have penetrated the vitals of our nation. We must stiffen our citizens' and our nation's diplomatic attitude toward the entire communist international conspiracy and the brutal despots leading it. We must arouse our friends and neighbors to a better understanding of the value of personal freedom and to the importance of keeping government close to the people. We must take a clear look at our moral weakening. In our churches, our schools, our homes, we must build the caliber of leadership that a free people must have in order to remain free. It is too late for continued apathy. We must realize the true meaning of patriotism, as did such heroic Americans as Nathan Hale, who chose death instead of tyranny with the proud words, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." Since our nation was founded, Americans have not faltered when our country was in danger. From the farmers at Lexington and Concord, the frontiersmen at the Alamo, the valiant doughboys who sleep in Flanders, and the Marines on Iwo Jima, Americans have paid the ultimate price for our freedom. This war against communism is your war. At this crucial moment of human history, will you enlist and pledge a part of your mental, physical, material, and spiritual resources in this fight? On the manner in which Americans respond to this challenge rests the future hope of all free men.